Don't take it off. Just do it. The rancher who couldn't walk away. Before we dive into the story, don't forget to like the video and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. The wind came hard off the plains that evening, rattling Eli Carter's fence posts as he worked the line. He'd been out since sunrise, fixing the same stretch of barbed wire for the third time that week. Coyotes were getting bold again, and so were the rustlers. He was halfway through tightening a wire when he saw her. A woman stood just beyond the north fence, her clothes dusty and torn like she'd come straight through a storm. A sorrel mare waited behind her, sides heaving from a long ride. The woman didn't move, just stared across the field at Eli. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Eli straightened, wiped sweat from his brow, and called out, "You lost, ma'am?" Her lips parted, but her voice came out cracked. "Just thirsty. My horse, too." He nodded once. "Water trough's back there by the barn." She hesitated before leading her horse closer. Up close, she looked worn to the bone, like she hadn't slept in days. Her face was streaked with dust, and one strap of her dress had torn loose. She caught Eli looking and turned away sharply. "I'll fix that fence later," he muttered, heading toward the barn, leaving her to drink. But as he walked off, he couldn't shake the way her eyes had looked, tired, wild, like someone running from more than the wind. That night, long after the sun sank behind the hills, Eli saw a lamplight flicker near the barn. The stranger hadn't gone, and something about that didn't sit right with him, or maybe it did more than he wanted to admit. By morning, Eli found her still there, sitting beside an old whiskey barrel near the barn, her hands wrapped around a tin cup of water, eyes red from a sleepless night. "You plan on staying?" he asked, setting down a bucket of feed for the horses. She blinked, startled. "Didn't mean to trespass. Just needed a place to rest. I'll be gone soon as the sun's high." Eli studied her for a moment. The way she said it, too quick, too defensive, told him she was hiding something. He'd seen that look before, years back, in men who'd done things they weren't proud of. He crouched by the barrel, pulling off the lid to check the rainwater inside. "Ain't no law against breathing, ma'am. But if someone's after you, this ranch ain't a good place to draw trouble." Her hands tightened around the cup. "You don't have to worry about that." He raised an eyebrow. "Don't I?" For the first time, she met his eyes. And beneath the grit and fear, Eli saw a kind of steel, worn but unbroken. She sighed and glanced toward the horizon. "My name's Clara Vale. I was a seamstress in Tumble Ridge. The sheriff's men think I did something that I didn't." Eli stood silent for a long moment. "What kind of something?" "Murder," she said quietly. The word hung in the air like dust in sunlight. Eli looked down at his boots, then back at her. He didn't believe it, not yet, but he didn't believe in coincidences either. "You're either telling the biggest lie of your life," he said slowly, "or the truth no one else will hear." Clara's voice trembled, but she held his gaze. "Then you're the first one who's listened." Eli turned toward the corral. "Rest for now. We'll figure out the rest after breakfast." But as he walked away, he knew this wasn't the kind of trouble that left by morning, and somehow he didn't mind. The sky had turned the color of tarnished silver by noon. Out past the north ridge, thunder rolled low, crawling closer. Eli worked fast, pulling in the horses, but his eyes kept drifting toward the barn where Clara was mending her torn dress by the light of an oil lamp. She wasn't the same as when he'd found her. Cleaned up some, hair brushed, sleeves rolled, but there was still that shadow in her eyes. A hunted look. When he stepped inside, she didn't glance up. "Storm'll be here before long," he said. "I know," she murmured, focusing on the needle and thread. He leaned on a post, watching the steady movement of her hands. "You sew like someone who's done it all her life." "I had a little shop, near the square." Her voice softened for the first time. "Used to make wedding dresses." Hard to believe now. Eli caught something in her tone, bitterness, maybe grief. "You were married?" She shook her head. "Almost. He was the sheriff's deputy. That's why they think I did it." Eli frowned. "He's the one who died?" Clara nodded once. "They found him in the alley behind my shop. Knife in his chest. Only my name and the blood left behind." Thunder cracked hard enough to rattle the barn walls. Eli's jaw tightened. He didn't know if he believed her story, but he knew fear when he saw it. And this woman wasn't lying about that. "You think they'll come looking this far out?" he asked. "They always do," she whispered. Eli exhaled through his nose. "Then I guess I'd better load the rifle." That made her look up, startled. You'd help me? Don't know yet, he said. But I sure as hell ain't handing a woman over till I've heard both sides. Outside, the first drops hit the dust, spreading dark circles across the ground. And as the wind rose, Eli knew he'd already crossed a line he couldn't uncross. The rain hit hard after sundown, drumming steady on the tin roof. The lamps flickered, throwing soft gold light across the cabin walls. Eli sat at the table, cleaning his Winchester, the quiet clicks of the rifle filling the space between them. Clara stood near the window, her hands twisting the fabric of her dress. Are you sure they won't come tonight? She asked. Eli didn't look up. Can't be sure of anything in a place like this. Lightning flashed, spilling through the window. For a heartbeat, Clara saw her reflection beside his in the glass. Her fear, his stillness, and something about it felt almost cruel. He could face a storm with dry eyes. She'd been running from one her whole life. Then 3 hard knocks came at the door. Clara froze. Eli's eyes met hers. He didn't need to say a word. He rose quietly, rifle in hand, and stepped toward the door. Stay behind me, he murmured. Another knock. Louder. Eli cracked the door open just enough to see the shape of 2 men in slicker coats, badges glinting in the lantern light. Evenin'. Gentlemen, Eli said evenly. Evenin'. Sorry to trouble you, sir, one of them replied, voice rough with road dust. We're looking for a woman. Name of Clara Vale. Seen anyone riding through? Eli leaned his shoulder against the frame. Ain't seen much of anyone, not in this rain. The deputy's eyes shifted past him toward the lamplight. Mind if we take a look around? I do mind, Eli said flatly. You got a warrant? The man smiled, showing a row of tobacco-stained teeth. You talking law with a lawman? I'm talking about my land, Eli said. His voice was calm, but the barrel of his rifle glinted at his side. For a moment, no one moved. The storm howled around them, tearing through the quiet like a blade. Then the deputy spat into the mud. Fine, we'll be back come sunrise, and if she's here, you'll hang right beside her. Eli shut the door slow, the latch clicking into place. When he turned, Clara was trembling near the hearth, her face pale. You lied for me, she whispered. Eli set the rifle down. I bought us a few hours, that's all. But as the thunder rolled again, Clara realized he hadn't done it out of pity. He'd done it because something in him, something he thought was long gone, had already decided she was worth the risk. The storm broke before dawn, leaving the world washed and quiet. Mist hung low over the pastures, and the smell of wet earth drifted through the cabin's open window. Clara sat by the fire, hair damp, blanket wrapped tight around her shoulders. Eli poured coffee into 2 tin mugs and set one beside her. Thanks, she said softly. He sat across from her, elbows on his knees, studying the flames. They'll be back, sure as sunrise. You want to tell me the rest before I decide how far I'm sticking my neck out? Clara stared into the cup, watching the steam twist. I didn't kill him, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. But I was there. Eli didn't interrupt. I was closing the shop when I heard shouting out back. I went to see, and he was already down. The deputy, Owen. Her eyes clouded. He'd been chasing a man for weeks, someone running opium through the saloons. But it wasn't me. I swear it, Eli's gaze stayed steady. Who was it then? Clara swallowed hard. His own brother. I saw him there, knife in hand. When he saw me, he ran, and by morning he told the sheriff I did it. Eli leaned back, the floorboards creaking under his boots. And you ran. What else could I do? No one in that town would have believed me. Silence filled the room again, heavy as the air after rain. You could have gone east, he said. Found work somewhere no one knew your name. I tried, but they always find me. She looked up at him. And now I've dragged you into it. Eli stood and crossed to the window. The morning light fell across his face, tracing the scar that ran from his temple to his jaw, a mark that told its own story. You didn't drag me, he said quietly. I stayed. She looked at him for a long moment, something soft and fragile flickering in her eyes. Why? He met her gaze. Because I know what it's like to be blamed for a thing you didn't do. The room went still. Outside, the wind stirred the wet grass and the horses shifted in their stalls. In that quiet moment, something unspoken passed between them. A truth that didn't need words. By noon, the sky was clean again, blue and endless. The air carried that calm that always came after a storm, but neither of them could rest easy. Eli was in the barn, saddling his horse, when Clara appeared in the doorway. She'd borrowed a clean shirt and an old hat that belonged to his late sister, the brim shadowing her eyes. "You shouldn't come," Eli said, tightening the cinch strap. "I can't hide here forever," she answered. "They'll only keep hunting me." He paused, meeting her gaze. "You sure you're ready to walk back into the same town that wants you dead?" Her jaw set. "I'd rather face the truth than live scared." Eli studied her a moment longer, then nodded once. "Then we ride at first light." But morning came sooner than they wanted. They rode hard through the foothills, the prairie stretching wide and empty under a rising sun. The silence between them wasn't cold. It was full, heavy with things unsaid. When they stopped near a ridge for water, Clara finally spoke. "You never told me what happened to you. Why you live out here alone?" Eli looked out toward the horizon, where the faint outline of Tumble Ridge shimmered in the distance. "I used to wear a badge," he said. Clara blinked. "You were a lawman?" "Deputy," he said. "Years back." "Before I quit? Why'd you quit?" He took a long breath. "Because one day I shot the wrong man. He'd been framed, same as you. And I believed what they told me." Clara stared at him, her voice softening. "So this helping me, it's about making it right?" He shook his head. "No, it's about not making the same mistake twice." They reached the edge of town by late afternoon, tying their horses behind the livery. Clara's hands trembled as she looked down the dirt street, the same one she'd fled months ago. Eli glanced toward the sheriff's office, where the flag hung limp in the still air. "Stay close," he said. "Whatever happens, we don't run this time." She nodded, though fear still shadowed her eyes. "If I die today, I just want you to know." "Don't," he said quietly. "You ain't dying today." And together they stepped out into the open street, walking straight toward the law. Tumble Ridge hadn't changed much. Same crooked signs, same smell of whiskey and horse sweat drifting through the streets. But for Clara, every step felt like walking through a memory she'd rather forget. The townsfolk stopped what they were doing as she passed. Conversation stilled. A few men muttered her name under their breath like a ghost had come back to haunt them. Eli kept close, his hat low, hand resting near the Colt on his hip. They walked straight toward the sheriff's office. The man waiting on the porch wore a heavy coat despite the heat. His badge gleamed on his chest, but his face was darker, creased, mean, and familiar. "Sheriff Vale," Eli said evenly. The older man smirked. "So you know my name. And you brought me back the murderess," Clara's breath caught. "You're his father." The sheriff's eyes hardened. "I'm the law here, and I'm the man whose son you butchered." "She didn't kill him," Eli said. The sheriff's gaze slid to Eli's gun. "And you are?" "Someone who's seen enough lies ruin good people." A crowd was forming now, whispers rising like dust. The sheriff took a slow step forward. "You got proof, Cowboy?" Eli didn't answer. Instead, he pulled a folded letter from his coat pocket. "Found this in your barn back up near Clear Rock. Belonged to a man named Jonas Vale. Recognize the name?" The sheriff's face paled just for a moment. Eli continued, his voice low and steady. "Jonas wrote that he couldn't stand living under his brother's orders no more. Said he was done running opium through Tumble Ridge. Said if anyone found him dead, it was Owen Vale's doing, not Clara's." The murmurs grew louder. Clara stared at Eli, wide-eyed. "That's a lie," the sheriff snapped. "You forged it." Eli's tone sharpened. "You think I'd risk my life and hers to wave a fake letter in your face?" The sheriff reached for his gun, but Eli was faster. His Colt was out, hammer back before the sheriff's fingers even brushed leather. "You can draw," Eli said quietly. "But you better be right." The street went dead silent. The sheriff's hand froze, trembling. After a long moment, he looked at Clara, then dropped his gaze. "Get out of my town," he muttered. Eli didn't move. "You clear her name first." The sheriff looked up, eyes burning with fury, but he nodded. "Fine, the case dies here. Take her and go before I change my mind." Eli holstered his gun and turned to Clara. "Let's ride." As they mounted up, Clara looked back one last time. The sheriff still stood there, staring at the dust rising behind them, the truth finally too heavy to carry. The sun was sinking low when they left Tumble Ridge behind. The wind was soft again, carrying only the smell of sage and dust. For the first time in months, Clara wasn't running. Eli rode a little ahead, his hat tilted low, watching the horizon. The silence between them wasn't heavy anymore. It was steady, like something earned. They stopped by a dry creek bed to rest their horses. Clara dismounted, walking a few steps away to watch the sky burn orange and gold. Eli joined her, his boots crunching softly in the dirt. "You didn't have to do what you did," she said. "You could have handed me over. Saved yourself the trouble." Eli took off his hat, running a hand through his hair. "Wouldn't have sat right. Not after seeing the way they looked at you." She smiled faintly. "You don't know what it's like, spending every day waiting for the world to believe the worst about you." "I do," he said quietly. She turned to him, studying his face in the fading light. "You said you shot the wrong man once. Does that still haunt you?" "Every morning," he admitted. "But I figure the only thing worse than living with it is not learning from it." For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the soft rustle of the wind in the grass and the creak of saddle leather cooling behind them. Then Clara said, "You saved me, Eli. I don't even know how to thank you." "You just did." Their eyes met, and something shifted. The walls they'd both built for so long began to crumble, not in a rush, but slow, like sunlight creeping through the cracks after a storm. Eli took a step closer, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You still planning on running?" "Not if I've got a place to stay." "You do," he said simply. She looked down, then back up at him. "And if people come asking questions again?" He gave a faint smile. "Then I'll tell them what I told you that first night. There's no law against breathing." Clara laughed softly, the sound light for the first time. She looked out at the wide open land, their land now, and felt something she hadn't in a long while. Peace. That night, back at the ranch, they lit a fire outside the barn. The stars hung bright above them, and the flames painted their faces gold. They didn't say much. They didn't have to. Sometimes all a soul needed was someone who believed in it long enough to bring it home. The first light of morning broke slow and soft over Dust Vale. Mist hung low along the pasture, and the air smelled like rain and new grass. Clara stepped out of the cabin, pulling Eli's coat tighter around her shoulders. The ranch was quiet except for the rustle of the wind through the fence line. She could see Eli out near the corral, checking the horses, same as he did every dawn. For a moment she just watched him, the way he moved steady and sure, like he belonged to this land. The same man who'd faced down lawmen for her, risked everything, and still managed to look at her like she was worth saving. He noticed her and gave a small nod, the ghost of a smile playing at his lips. "Coffee's on the stove," he called. She smiled back. "You always up before the sun?" "Can't sleep when there's work to do." She walked to the fence and rested her arms on the rail beside him. The horses grazed quietly, tails swishing through the early light. "So," she said softly. "What now?" Eli glanced at her. "Now you stop running." "I don't even know who I am anymore." He looked at her for a long moment, then said, "You're Clara Vale. You're innocent. You're still here. That's enough for today." She blinked back a tear, smiling through it. "And you, Eli Carter. What do you do when the world finally stops chasing you?" He gave a quiet chuckle. "Maybe I start living instead of just fixing fences." The sun was climbing higher now, catching her hair and turning it gold. She turned to him, heart full, voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for not walking away." He reached out, brushing her hand where it rested on the fence. "Wasn't never gonna." For a while they stood there side by side, watching the day begin. Two souls who'd been hunted, haunted, and somehow found peace in the same stretch of sky. And when the wind came through again, soft and warm across the fields, Clara finally breathed easy. She didn't have to run anymore. Not from the law, not from her past, not from herself. Eli tipped his hat toward the horizon. "Long day ahead," he said. She smiled. "I've got nowhere else to be." The ranch, the light, the quiet, their lives settled into place. The world wasn't perfect, but it was theirs,